Welcome, dear listeners, to the first episode of Small Teams, Big Wins. We are welcomed today by our lovely guest, Tamara Marshall. She's a marine scientist by day, an entrepreneur, and a professor at the University of Texas at Dallas by evening. Tamara, I don't know how you do it. But
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's really awesome. And yeah, we'll get into how I do it. How about that?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Well, hey, I want to start off. I want to kind of get you in the mix here early because, as I remember, you have a very big week coming up ahead with the feeder that I think will be coming out somewhat soon. And if I can recollect our conversation, you're saying that you've been working on this for over a year now. So how's the excitement? 3 years.
3 years. 3
Boom.
years.
Combine the three.
Times that by a whole lot.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
How are you feeling? How are the emotions? Kind of going into the launch.
I'm actually really nervous.
Yep.
So to kind of give a little bit of background, I started the idea of the frozen fish food feeder, which we can get in the specifics of it later if you want. But 3 years ago, while I was getting 2 masters at UTD, University of Texas at Dallas, and it's been a really long journey to get to where I am. And we launch on Wednesday. I don't know when you're gonna post this, but it's in 4 days now. And so, we're launching on our crowdfunding campaign, and as much time and effort as I've put into it, I'm not even close to feel like I'm ready, and that's kind of the nature of the startup, right? Like you were always kind of like running and putting things together and last minute, what do you think about, let's try that. And even as much as we've planned the launch of the company, it's still like, did you do this, how do you think about maybe we should change this, pivot this, move this. And it's constant last minute, with me and my team just doing all the last minute like marketing and even the data analysts of like, what should we be doing, let's change it. So it's a lot, and it's nervous because you kind of put your baby out there and you just have to kind of see how the world responds, and you just don't know.
Totally. Yeah. And I've kind of been sitting on that idea as of late, right? Like sometimes we think that there's a destination that we like need to get to, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, once I get to that destination, like once I launch my baby and have all this success, like, okay, then I'm going to be like super happy and whatever,
Yeah.
Well, the whole joke on all of that, right, is that once we get to that destination, like, well, we're going to want to kind of challenge ourselves again, right? And there'll be another iteration. And so kind of just like, maybe kind of going through this week, just try and really settle in with that, and just be like, this is part of it, right? This is part of the process. I love the process. There's no destination where I need to get to too quickly. I can sit and just enjoy all the little nuances that come along late, that come along early, right? So that's super exciting. Congratulations.
I mean,
we're looking forward to hearing about it.
Thank you. It's a roller coaster of emotions because you're so proud of where you've gotten to and where you've been, but there's always that regret. Did I do enough? Do I need to do more? Like, what if I missed, So it's, you're never, if you launch when you're ready, like you've launched too late. And so it's like, you're always constantly like trying to run as fast as you can without tripping. And so that's kind of the speed of the startup, and I'm trying to run as fast as I can. I'm really hoping I don't trip. That's kind of where I am. Yeah.
I love it.
I'm getting the sense of that for quite some time, maybe in your entire life, even that you're used to juggling so many things at the same time, and not just small things, large things, as far as getting your PhD and schooling and getting a business going and coming up with these ideas, and then juggling the team as well. How do you feel like, I guess, when did you start having to juggle all these things, and what taught you how to do so, and then how has that kind of helped you get to this point, and then get to the point of launching something pretty big?
Yeah, I always tell people I have a very intense personality. Like, I don't slow down. I never have. I got my first full-time job when I was 14, and I started college at 14 at the same time. And I have literally never stopped. I've had at least 2 jobs at every point of my entire life, or a job and a business. Like, I've never slowed down. And, even when I don't have my PhD, I'm gonna correct you, I have 2 masters in business. You're good. So even when I was in school doing 2 masters, I had 2 full-time jobs and starting the company. So I don't even know if I know how to slow down. Like, that's just not in my DNA. It is like, I kind of feel like life is so short. You have to take advantage of every single moment. And I know there's other people who are like, work is one part and you got to love and enjoy your life, and that's the other part. But it's like, I love work. I love what I do. And, people are like, how do you work like so many hours on your business? It's like, but that's my energy. That's where I get my excitement from. I love working with my team and creating a prototype, and, envisioning something in your brain and having it come to fruition is so rewarding. I love it. I absolutely love it. But it's intense. Yeah. I don't think I will ever slow down.
Yeah. The thrill of it, the thrill of accomplishing these things, and the challenges too are just as exciting as the successes, and that's beautiful. I commend you for being able to get to this point, and it says a lot by just having 2 jobs ever since the beginning of your life, essentially, and keeping that mentality moving forward. Actually, right before we started this podcast, Jordan and I were just discussing this exact same thing. It's how do you, one, be consistent and change like your daily habits where you are getting after it 24/7, and then finding happiness within that as well. And if you, one, change habits that you aren't, that aren't making you successful, or aren't allowing you to be a go-getter 24/7, then well, if you do that, then I feel like one day you'll be able to look back, or even along the process in certain times, and just be like, you're mentally more focused, physically more focused, and it's just going to help you just become a better person in the process,
Yeah. And it's a lot, I think, trying to get like the focus in order to keep the motivation going. And I'm a solo founder. I always have been. And so you don't have a co-partner that you can like lean on, and you have to motivate yourself, because your team's not gonna do it for you. Like, you are the one that has to sacrifice, and it is a sacrifice. You give up your time with your friends and your family and binge watching TV shows, and like, you don't get to do any of that. And it is, there's a lot of hustle, but as far as like how to become a goal setter, and you have to love what you do. If you don't love what you do, you're never going to survive. I've always said that in business. Like, if this is not your passion, you will burn out before you get off the ground. Right. But if you love what you do, one of the things I do is I do goal settings. And so there are different types. I call them, I learned in school, 50,000 feet in the air goals. And that is like, I'm going to work on marketing. I'm going to work on, product. I'm going to work on whatever. Those are not realistic goals. They're too big. They're really, really, really big. And when you say marketing, your brain just kind of falls apart. But I can break that down into, I'm going to set up my Facebook account. I'm going to do 2 posts. I'm going to, do and really tiny 15, 20, 30-minute goals. And then you set out all of your goals for the entire week. And I hit every silo, because as a CEO, as you guys know, you're doing everything, right? Like, you have to be in charge of like your accounting and your law and your prototyping, and, absolutely everything falls to you. And so I set goals in every single silo that I do that are bite-sized. And I do not go to sleep until I've accomplished my bite-sized goals. Every single day, I hit my goals. And, I work with a lot of founders. I like to mentor startups. And one of the things is, it is so easy to put your business on the back burner and put everything else forward. It is easy to put your significant other, of course, your kids, like, your other jobs, like whatever your friends, family. It's so easy to put that so far on the front burner that everything else goes to the back burner, and that everything else is typically your business. And so it is learning how to balance that in a way that you have to be willing to sacrifice both in order to get a company off the ground. And there are times of feast and famine. And so sometimes there are weeks where I am plugged in. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have time. This is my focus. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to that birthday party. This is what I'm doing this week. And there are times where, you know, my company can go a little bit more on autopilot and I can focus a little bit more on my front burners. But it is a matter of like ebbing and flowing with that business. But this part of the business, it never actually stops. It might slow, but you can't let it stop. It's too easy to have days where you're just like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, it's too easy to do that.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's funny, like the visual that comes to my head is that you have these like large straws and there's 30 of them surrounding you and there's plates spinning on all of them and you're like da, 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 and you like get it with your toes and you're like okay, like wait, I gotta stretch over here, and you know, and you just gotta like be like, you know, malleable and just, you know, versatile and do all that. And so like, guys, where my head goes, because I'm an engineer, right? Like that's just the way that my brain goes. And like Tamara, I love getting tunnel vision. Like tunnel vision is actually like kind of where I naturally tend to be, and I kind of have to fight to kind of break out of that a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
But the way that I think about kind of building a business and just kind of tackling a problem in general is, I think what you were talking about, your 15 to 30 minute goals are like little building blocks on the first level, you know? And it's like, just start knocking those out without thinking too much about the bigger picture, because I promise you, by aggregating those 15 to 30 minute goals, they'll start compounding on each other, right? And then you'll kind of get up to, and then it starts becoming like an optimization process. You now are starting to get these pieces in place, but you couldn't get these pieces in place until you got these in place. So it takes time. It takes years, you know, sometimes. And to your point, right? Like if you're not super grounded in the why that you're doing this, then you're not gonna make it through what's required from you from a time and commitment standpoint to finally get the pieces where they need to be to where you can kind of optimize them down the line.
For sure.
So I guess kind of like my question for you, related to, you know, you're obviously a marine scientist and you're overseeing, is it an aquarium or a lab aquarium?
An aquarium, yeah.
So you're overseeing an aquarium, and then you've got Manta Systems going as well. And I guess I want to kind of think about like earlier on for you, where was that kind of point where you were like, okay, I've kind of broken through that initial first level of pieces, and now I actually have some real kind of pieces to start playing with a little bit. Is there a time where you can kind of look back, maybe kind of, you know, through your founder's journey where, I don't know, where that kind of was registering for you?
You mean when I decided it was more than an idea and moving towards the company?
Yeah, like you'd already committed some time to this. You'd kind of been, you know, making some headway, and you finally kind of broke through that initial gutted out process, and you're like, oh, okay, nice. Like, okay, I can actually kind of now see where this can go.
Yeah. So definitely. And this is something that I always teach, is that, you know, you're going to have 100 ideas in your lifetime. You're going to have 100 business ideas. 98 of them are garbage. They're absolute. They're trash. But two of them are probably brilliant. And so when you have an idea, you can't hold on to it so tight and you're like, this is my idea. This is the one I'm going with. You have to hold it really loose, and you have to figure out, is this a good or a bad idea? Because every idea doesn't mean it's going to make a good business. A lot of ideas, they should exist. There is a demand, you know, people do want it. That doesn't make it a good business. It doesn't.
Right.
You have to have every piece of the puzzle. You have to have, your business model, your pricing, is this the right time, your product market fit? Like every piece of the business has to make sense in order for it to be successful. So the first thing is, I always say, spend a lot of time validating your idea. Talk to people, go out. And that's what nobody does. The idea in their head makes like so much sense, but you haven't talked to people who are actually going to purchase it. You have to go out and don't just do like, oh, here's a 5-question survey or ask your friends and family. They're going to say yes every time, right? But actually go and talk to hundreds of people. And are they saying the same thing? 100%, I want this. Or are they saying, I mean, it's cool, right? And so you have to go all the way through, and that process typically is pivots. It's like, I have this idea that I love and everybody else wants adjacent. They don't, not that they want this. And so you have to pivot to what they actually want, because you have to mold to what that market is going to pay for. And so for me, I did a lot of classes. I did a lot of surveys. I talked to more than 500 people, validating the idea, the pricing, what I was thinking as far as size, capacity, that gave me a product market fit and even a slight business model. And then from then I started doing my prototyping. Okay, I love the concept. Is it actually feasible? Because I created a completely different product that didn't even exist before. And so it was really going through and creating the earliest prototypes and saying, okay, is this technology actually possible? And then once I figured out,
proving to people that it's possible, which is so sick.
So once I could actually get a miniaturized freezer to freeze, which is not typical freezing technology, that doesn't exist. When you get it to actually freeze, that's when I was like, I'm onto something.
Yeah.
But it took a year and a half before I decided I'm onto something. Because I was on prototype like 14. I'm iterating. I'm doing, all of the validation, all the business modeling. I'm doing all of the different parts and pieces, and I'm not married to the idea yet.
Right.
A lot of people get married to the idea 3-4 weeks in, and they're like, this is my baby. And then they're running for the next 3 years. And you're like, is that the best you can do? So it did take a very long time for me to get to, I'm all in.
I'm very curious because about the aquarium feeding and the prototyping itself, I'm very curious to dive into exactly how you started the avenue of where to prototype, how to prototype, from drawing or from brain to an actual physical object. And then two, how did you kind of narrow it down to this specific idea of frozen fish food feeder? And where did that idea come from? And tell me a little bit about more of those two questions, if you don't mind.
Sure. So this is something that honestly should have already existed. I've wanted this for 20 years. I've known hundreds of people that want this. So saltwater fish typically eat frozen fish food, and they eat numerous times a day. So you're feeding your tank several times a day, and going on vacation is just a nightmare, right? And so there was always a need for this, but I was not the person to do this business. I am not an engineer. I'm not a technical co-founder. Like, that's not my skill set in any way. And when I was in school, we started doing all these like fake marketing classes, and you have to come up with business ideas. And this is literally the only idea I was coming up that I was consistently like, there's something here. And I had so many people like, that's stupid. That's the worst idea ever. It's so niche. Like, nobody wants that. And then I just started doing some early surveys, and I was like, I mean, everything I'm learning in school tells me that this makes sense. It's niche. It is a high priced object. The market is actually massive. It's billions of dollars. Like, it makes a lot of sense. And so that's when I started like moving in that direction. But again, I don't have the technical ability to do it. And I also didn't have any money. And so I just talked to everybody. Literally, are you an engineer? Okay, here's what I got. I'm thinking, and they're all like, it's not possible. And I'm like, yeah, but I want it to be. And I just talked to more people, and they just kept saying it's not possible. And I was like, you know what? I'm a smart enough cookie that I think I could figure this out. So I studied mechanical electrical engineering. And when I say studied, I just mean I read a lot of research papers. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I just started ordering stuff on Amazon. I just started building stuff together. And I had to learn everything from like volts, watts, like I don't know any of this. Yeah. And so that took me like the first year was figuring out, okay, how to actually build a freezer. And as soon as I could build a freezer, that's when people were willing to talk to me. Because they're like, okay, so now all we have to do is iterate what you've come up with and make it better. And then I started getting some help. So I reached out to a guy at UTD, Tim Gibbons, and he started helping me 3D print because I'd never done a 3D printer, you know, at that point. Now I'm doing that. Now I'm having to do CAD drawings. I'm like, I've learned all of that because you have to. And so, you know, when I first started, it was a lot of, I don't know how to do that. That's not my skill set. Like I don't even know how to get into that next step. And I had one of my co-professors, it was Brian Hong. He just said, just figure it out. Go do it. Yep. And I kept saying, but I don't know how to. He's like, go do it. Go figure it out. Go get a book. Go watch videos. Go buy your stuff. Figure it out. There's nothing on this planet you can't figure it out. Go figure it out. And I was like, I probably pushed back on him like 3-4 months. So I was like, I don't know. I'm a biologist. I don't know mechanical, electrical, anything. And so it was literally a matter of just go figure it out. And so I've spent this entire process. And that's the thing about a startup. Like you don't know how to do most of it. Like I've taken 6 accounting classes. The only thing I've learned is to hire an accountant, right? Like you have to take the classes. You have to learn it. You have to put yourself in. I'm not a marketing person. That's not my jam. I have absolutely learned marketing. I'm on every social media channel there is. Like I have a podcast. Like you have to learn it and you have to be willing to get out of your comfort zone because where you're at is not where your company is. You have to go to your, you know, where you're uncomfortable, learn those skill sets, perfect those skill sets, and then move forward. And especially when you go to hire people, you don't know what to hire if you don't know what their job is. You know, and as a CEO, you wear every single hat for what, the first 2, 3, 4 years, like, you know, you're wearing every single hat. So you have to learn all of that, like data analytics. You got to learn it, even if that's not even what you're interested in. It's still important. You have to learn it because one day you're going to hire a data analyst and you need to know what their skill set is.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I just kind of want to take a quick pause here and just kind of say to like our listeners, if you're looking for kind of one way to go out and go grab feedback from people, right? So like whenever as we've kind of like hit this point in the conversation, it's like, okay, if you're early on in your journey, it's get really grounded in the why, right? And then you'll get to the how, and then eventually you'll get to the what, like what your offer is, right? And so once you hit that what, one strategy that you can do is, you know, we gave away $25 gift cards for collaborative feedback sessions on our offers, you know, to get to just hear from real people, hear from our target audience. Are we actually meeting those pain points? And sometimes you're kind of close, sometimes you're far off, but it's not really about that, right? It's about just kind of iterating and make sure that you're getting to that point with no ego and no attachment, like you said, to how you thought the idea was going to go. Like you got to be, you know, it's like this weird combination of like, okay, putting foot on the gas, but then at sometimes like letting up and knowing when to kind of let things take shape, you know? So just wanted to kind of throw that in for our listeners.
That's beautiful. I'm curious, when did how long did you have the wholesale coral business, and when did the retail saltwater fish store start in correlation to coming up with the new fish feeder, frozen fish feeder?
Yeah, so I did the coral wholesale business for about 2 years. Now, I started that business, I knew nothing about business, and I made every mistake possible. One of the biggest mistakes is I didn't really understand pricing well enough. I didn't understand how much profit I needed to make in order to keep the lights on. And like when you do your first business analysis, you know, you have such a basic mindset if you're not studied in it. It's like, okay, well, it'll cost me like $10 and then I'll sell it for $20. So I'm making profit, and I'm making $10 profit. But how many $10 are you making? Like, you know, how much does it actually cost? What's the overhead? And at what point are you making enough money that you can pay yourself? And that's what most founders, they never get to. They never actually get to pay themselves enough money, like to pull out enough money, because the first thing that happens with a business is it gets busier, and now you need to hire somebody. And now they're getting the money and you're not. And so it was really difficult for me. That was the first thing. I didn't understand pricing. And then the second thing, I didn't understand that my skill set wasn't easily trainable. So I couldn't pay somebody to come help me that I could afford. That was kind of the issue that I had. So there was no nights, like weekends off, there's no vacation, and there was just no way to move forward from that. And so that was kind of one of my biggest issues, and I probably would have stayed on that path, just trying to just push it. I was growing all the corals in my house, and so I didn't have like a you know, retail space or anything. And I had my neighbors call, like the subdivision, and they were like, you can't do that. And so I got shut down.
Oh no.
And yeah.
Oh, no fun community.
Yeah. And the thing is,
it's
in my house. Like, people don't even know what's in my house, but I had like a party, and then people came over and they're like, you can't do that. And yeah, they ruined that business, but I really loved that business, and I learned a lot about that business. I learned a lot of what I was doing wrong. And so I kind of had the option, okay, I can shut everything down completely, or I can kind of pivot and just go to a retail store, which I didn't want to do, because I know that is 7 days a week, 12-hour days, really intense. And I was like, you know, let me just try that. And so I pivoted to a retail store, and I did that. That was about 5 years or so, and that was actually really successful. So I very much enjoyed doing the retail store. Again, a million lessons learned. I still hadn't learned pricing well enough. I did not have enough money. So, you know, when you have live animals, you get diseases come in, you can wipe out your whole tank, like your whole store. And then you have to have enough money to start back. And so, you know, when I very first started, the first shipment of fish I got in, and I was running really like late. And so I didn't have time to really quarantine anything. And you typically don't anyway, but I put out all the fish and they all had disease and they all died. And that was like $6,000 of fish. And, you know, I was expecting to sell those, make profit, and then keep going, right?
Right.
Then you're negative. So that was kind of a really hard change for me. I eventually closed down that store. I moved to California. I became a marine research scientist. So I went back to school, I got my degree, and I moved to California. I wanted to go more research instead of just like a retail store. And so I did that for 5 years. And then I was like, I want another business. I'm hungry. So, yeah, I started my master's, my program, I guess it was like 3.5 years ago. So and then, it's basically as soon as I started my company.
Yeah, beautiful. And I know Darian, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, and I know Darian, right? Speaking of just kind of like challenges and lessons learned along the way, Darian, I want to ask you about the wedding venue business that you ran for such a long time, are still actively involved in, right? Can you kind of look back at some of those times, and you know, were there kind of some moments that you can look back on and being like, oh yeah, that was like clearly a hurdle where my knowledge of how to do this needed to rise to that. And then now once you kind of did that, going forward, you're like, oh, well, that's not as much of a, you know, that's kind of a valley behind me. Any kind of things like that come up for you when looking back at some of that?
You know, it was such a fast. So just to give some background and some history on this, my family opened up a wedding venue about 17 years ago. At that time, I was in high school, and then so I was just doing all the nitty gritty stuff, you know, cleaning, setups, yada yada yada. Fast forward, successful business. I was coming out of college, and well, I only made it through 2 years of college, by the way, but I found that wasn't for me, and essentially jumped straight into opening up a second wedding venue. And so that I think there's two things that, well, one main thing that helped me when I jumped into it. One was what was instilled in me as far as like work ethic and the amount of time that you need to put in and be willing and okay to put in, working Monday through Sunday nonstop. There was one point when we were scaling that it was just me for the first 2 years. It was just me as the manager, the owner, the operator, everything. And, you know, I was getting there at 9 o'clock in the morning, not leaving until 11 o'clock at night, you know, just get home in time to shower and sleep and then get right back to it. And I was doing that and waking up with, you know, 100 emails in the inbox, and that's just on repeat. Right. And when you get into something, when you get into that and know what that feels like, then you're okay with kind of any challenges that arise along the way, because you're just, it's already instilled in you on what it takes. And so as things come up, it's like, oh, I can knock that out. Oh, I can knock that out. Everything becomes a little bit easier, and you become a little bit more in the flow of it. And number two, I think in the wedding business, particularly, that being having such a good personality and allowing really nothing to affect you is something that I think goes a long way when you're dealing with a lot of people, when you're dealing with things, whether it's like someone actively, you know, aggressively talking down at you or saying how you're doing something wrong, and just being okay to kind of take that in and move forward with happiness and knowing that you can successfully accomplish whatever comes in front of you. And that, by just like having some of that combined, allowed us to take it from, you know, we actually sold weddings before we even bought the place. And then within 3 years, we had over 80 weddings a year. And then it turned into 120 weddings a year. And then it turned into selling the business successfully. And, you know, going into, at this point, I kind of forget your question. I'm just kind of flowing, but going into small teams, big wins, you know, this was a small team. When we got to the point of before selling, we had 2 managers under me, and we were doing about $1.4 million in gross revenue a year. And just from a small team like this. And yeah, I mean, I think by getting into the business, doing everything you're on your own, and, you know, having such a great personality to be able to kind of teach people and help people learn. And I also was not a micromanager in any sort of way either. I allowed people, I jumped into this business and learned all the things that went wrong myself, and processed that myself. So I would give people a playbook and teach them up to a certain point, and then allow them to make their own mistakes, and then be like, hey, we would sit down. We wouldn't have any sort of conversation about why, like, I can't believe you made that mistake. It was more of like, okay, talk me through the process before that mistake occurred. What are the things that happened? And then when the mistake occurred, what was the process like when you were going through the different options of how to handle it? And then afterwards, looking back at it, what would you have done differently, if anything at all? Or was it kind of unavoidable? And, you know, what did you learn? And then we took that approach moving forward. And then, you know, as time goes, I think people receive that a lot better. But again, that's just kind of like my style and way. But I don't even know if I answered your question.
You sure did. Yeah, you sure did. Like, well, and you gave us a great segue to kind of hit the true spirit of what this podcast is all about, right? Small teams, big wins, right? That's one of the things that I've really come to understand is really whether you're a solopreneur, you know, or you're working at like a larger enterprise, even most things comes down to breaking things down into smaller teams. And like we were saying, right, building up those building blocks, right? So if smaller teams are efficient here, if it's a larger organization, it will be more successful. And if this is the whole organization on a smaller team, well, that will make a difference, right? And so that's like one of the, so this is kind of what Naptic does on our end, right? Is we try and help smaller teams leverage intelligent automations to gain some time back, to kind of force multiply. And so, yeah, just kind of want to throw in a quick blurb there about the podcast and the heart and spirit of it. And yeah, Tamara, once again, we just want to say thank you so much for being here on the podcast and helping us kick this thing off. So we're kind of heading in towards the back stage of the episode. And with that, I kind of wanted to move to, so like one of the goals of Naptic, of this podcast, is to be an educational and like technical resource for people. And so technology is very heavily involved in pretty much every facet of the modern business, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tamara, I wanted to kind of ask you, like, obviously you have the technology related to like the 3D printing and the like, okay, I need to figure out this freezing technology, right? I need to shrink the freezing down and I need to do all that. But then there's also like the technology associated with like, okay, like I'm using like Google Workspace and like, okay, I communicate on Slack, or I have project management software, or like, am I using like a client relationship management platform like HubSpot or something like that, right? So was there a point that you can kind of remember? Well, actually, forget the point, but just can you kind of talk to me a little bit about the evolution of just kind of some of the technology that you've used to juggle the like many tasks and many different kind of priorities that you have?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not a technology person, so again, you have to kind of learn everything as you go, because from my first company to like now, it's night and day. It's literally night and day of a business of what technology can do. And that wasn't even that long ago. And it's still completely crazy how much everything has changed. But I use every technology I can find, because again, I was a solo founder with a team of one for a very long time. Now we're a team of 5, but trying to figure out, okay, how do I cram 30 hours worth of work into 15? I have to figure out how to do everything as fast as possible and automate as fast as possible. So I embrace all technology. Of course, I use ChatGPT for a lot of things. So I use it for a lot of outlining, a lot of things. I even throw all of my data analytics a lot of the times into ChatGPT, and I'm like, what do you see? Like, what are the trends? And it can pull data, and it's not perfect, but it can pull data a lot faster than I can pull it. So there's a lot of cool things. And now that you can actually talk to ChatGPT, actually have a conversation. So I drive about 2.5 hours a day. And so I am always having conversations where I'm like, okay, here's what I'm struggling with. Here's my marketing issue, or, my videos aren't hitting. What else do I need to be doing? And I can actually have like an assistant built in with me the entire time. I do use Otter AI, and I throw Otter AI into all of my meetings, so it can do all of my note taking. It can do all of my meeting planning. It can summarize everything for me. So I really like those two. But then of course you use all the the other ones, like our email marketing. You use like MailChimp. That's the main one that I use. Canva, I use a lot of images, and so I use Canva for a lot of things. But I would probably very much benefit from you guys and figuring out like automations and like how to do things. I've been playing around with like is it Zapier? Am I saying that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. As far as, when somebody emails me, what that chain looks like, when they purchase a product, what that evolution looks like, what the email automations. So my frozen fish food feeder, it knows how much food is in it. So I have an auto refill subscription through the app. And so everything from like the auto refill notifications being triggered, the emails being triggered, the conversation, getting it sent to the company that's actually going to refill it, getting the tracking info, all of that is fully automated. Which of course, that's a whole full-time job like that I don't even have to do. And so that is that's going to be, really, really massive for me. And then all of my social media listening, I use Brand 24. And so I can find out what's being said about me and my company at all times, whether it's positive or negative. You always want to get ahead of that. You don't want to be, before I started using it, people were posting videos about it and I didn't even know. And, they were positive, which is great, but it'd be great if I could interact with them and jump into conversations and keep that flow going. And so that was really, really beneficial for me. As far as my team, we use Slack for all of our communications. So I like Slack because you can have all the different channels. And so you can have all the individual conversations as well as like your group conversations, your private conversations. So, like when I'm talking to my accountant or my lawyer, I don't want everybody else seeing it. And so that really helps me. And then we use Trello so we can have our boards done for all of our marketing. So we have a very intensive marketing campaign. And so you can kind of throw this video has been filmed, it gets thrown to my videographer, and when she throws it back, and everything can be like automated and as simple as possible. But as we've been expanding the team, we're adding more automation, we're adding more systems that make sense. We're looking at HubSpot now, and of course right now I'm using Metricool for all of my social media planning, and it does have some basic analytics built in there, but yeah, it is amazing. I'm probably able to do the job of like 3 or 4 people like many years ago, like before all of this automation, because it's just so amazing being able to get things up to speed. Yeah.
And I love that you brought up Zapier. Like one of those that we use is N8N, which for our listeners, those sorts of tools kind of act like the glue in between your suite of your business stack from a tech standpoint too. And so a lot of really kind of cool efficiencies to be gained there. But on the back half of that too, and maybe Darian, you can kind of speak to this a little bit, because man, we work in this industry and sometimes I get overwhelmed by the amount of tools that are out there, and it's like, holy crap, like which one should I use? Like there's 900 tools that can kind of do this one thing, but they're each slightly different a little bit, but not really, and all this kind of stuff too. So Darian, like how do you kind of, I don't know, keep all that, I guess, like where do you kind of go for identifying a cool tool or something that you want to use, and how do you kind of make the damn decision, like how do you get away from the Netflix overload and the tools overload and whatever, and what do you tell yourself to go, okay, like let's go with this,
I think a lot of it is, well, one, everyone has their own specific reason for using something, right? And from one person to the next, it could be one small difference that makes the change of why one person would use one thing and one person would use another thing, right? So I think the main thing is like identifying for yourself and for your business or whatever you're using it for, from and however that's going to be interconnected with another application, on which one is most specific to be able to best utilize that in the best manner to give you the most successful outcome. And it takes a lot of research too, because you can't, if you just choose one and essentially you're just picking out thin air because there's 100 different ones, and it's going to take so much time to pick it, to learn it, and then to realize, oh, this wasn't the one for me, which we've all have probably done that in some sort of case in scenario, even if it's not an application or not. But really understanding, narrowing it down is how I go through the process. Is I'll look at a bunch, then I'll narrow it down, because it's kind of easy to pick just by looking through a website pretty fast. And then once I have it narrowed down, I'll dive a little bit more deeper into the details of it. And once I dive into the details of it, I'll be like, okay, what do I need it for? And how is it going to be, utilized throughout my entire process of, from start to finish? And then I'll be able to usually narrow it down to one or at least two. And then really just picking one and say, all right, now I'm going to give this my full attention and focus and apply it as best I can. And then what's most likely going to happen eventually, sometime along the line, especially when it comes to technology, is there's going to be something better that comes out. But hopefully it's the application. It's just a more improved version of the application you're already using, which tends to be the case too. So that's my process for how I'm picking something.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, and for our listeners too, guys, we'll go ahead and attach onto our show notes. We'll attach kind of like our list of favorites across the different sections, right? And so if you're looking at a particular business area and you want to kind of look at some of the tools that are related to that, we'll happily throw in some of our favorites along with that. So.
I have a couple questions too. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's great because as a founder who like does not understand technology, it is super overwhelming. And there are, as you said, like 100 things and you need to pick one. And I throw it into ChatGPT and I'm like, here's what I need, what is the best applications, and then I'll try to like figure it out. But it's even that is super overwhelming. And you know what you end up is using 20 different apps. And that's where I am. You know, I'm using so many different platforms, and even as a
build up too.
That's the thing. Every month you're paying every single different platform. I'm like, am I even utilizing this? I'm using this one very specific use of this app. It can do 200 things, but I just need this one. It's like, is that the best use of my money and my time? And yeah, so I want your list. That sounds great.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious, when you release the frozen fish feeder, I'm curious. Okay, so when someone receives this, right, and they install it, I guess take me through the user case of it, and then when, let's just say something happens with it, what's that process going to be like on their end? You know, if something, you know, breaks, is like the app that you have, is it going to also kind of be able to figure out what's broken within it, and then how are you, as far as as a business, going to be answering those questions or plan on answering those questions that may come in, I guess?
Yeah. I'm going to say this is a startup and we don't know. That's the honest answer. We don't know. You know, so what I'm selling next week, I'm selling two different things. I'm selling a beta unit and I'm selling a final product. So if you want something that is polished and beautiful, that's your final product. If you want to go on this journey with me and you are going to get a product that's not perfect and you want to help beta test it with me, then that's going to be, so there's two different types of people that are going to be joining this campaign. But when something breaks, I mean, ideally when we get to the final product where we'll have tested it with over 100 people and it's going to be pretty good. They're probably going to have to, there'll be some parts like fans that they can probably purchase and replace if they're handy. Besides that, we'll have some sort of shipping in where they come in and they get a refurbished unit, something like that, where we can kind of do an exchange program. That's what we're mentally thinking is going to be reality. Who knows what's actually going to break, because, you know, as much as you stress test these in a lab, that is not real life. You know, and it's like, though, that's never broken on mine. Well, it broke on theirs. And now we have to figure it out. And so it is going to be a lot of those putting out fires of what the situation is, figuring out, okay, do we need different plastics? Do we need a bigger part? Does it need to be stronger? Like, there will be constant iteration and design with that. So, you know, it's going to be a learning process. We're going to figure it out.
I love it. Love it, Tamara. Love it. Well, guys, you know, I want to, you know, one of my favorite shows, that's like an interview type of show, is Hot Ones.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I love me some Hot Ones, and I always love what they did at the end of those segments, where it's, if you make it through all of the hot wings, right, and you get to the end, you know, he's like, this camera, that camera, and you know, whoever does it gets, you know, about a minute or two to just kind of like let the people know, you know, what you want to let the people know, right? And so, Tamara, I just want to thank you again very much for kicking off this podcast, and I hope you enjoyed the experience. We thoroughly enjoyed interacting with you, and yeah, I just kind of like to give you the floor here for a second and like let people know what you got going on or what you want them to know.
Well, okay. I'm glad I made it to the end of Hot Ones. So thank you very much. Yeah, I don't, you know, we're going to launch this publicly on Facebook Live. And so we're going to kind of get all of our fan base to kind of experience the launch of the company together, which I think is going to be fun. So I don't know when this is going to be air, but anybody wants to follow the journey. I think it's really cool to watch a product go from idea all the way through a commercialized product, and we are sharing all of that. So if anybody wants to follow the progress, that will be very cool. But I want to just say to any CEO out there, I would say, I just want to give a piece of advice, just a tiny, tiny piece of advice at the very end. It is very, very easy to consume your entire day putting out fires. And that's not the job of a CEO. The job of a CEO is you have to oversee everything. You have to hire people that are smarter than you. You have to trust the team that you have built. You have to give the corrections as needed. But your job is not micromanaging. It is not to get in there and fix the problems. It's to build the team to fix them. And to make sure that, whenever you are the CEO, you're making sure the umbrella is really strong, but you're also always looking to the future. You are always looking at, what next? Where are we going after this? It can't be every single day-to-day fires, because your company can't progress that way. You always have to be the visionary of the company looking out. And so for me, I like to give myself creative space and just be able to sit with ideas and dream big about what do I want this company to look like. And when you're so embedded and exhausted and just putting out constant, you don't have time for that. So just to make sure you give yourself time to breathe and give yourself time to dream about where you want your company to go.
Beautiful. I love it. And to all of our listeners, guys, we'll be sure to share links, details to the frozen fish feeder, and Tamara, more stuff that you got going on, of course. We just wish you the best of luck this week. I was very excited to talk with you ahead of this week, because I knew that you had this coming out, and so best of luck. You're doing such a great job. You have such a great energy about you, and we just thank you so much for being on the show. Darian, you got anything?
Yeah, I just wish you tons of happiness and success moving on this year, and we'll be tuning in on Wednesday, absolutely, and following your journey. I see so much in just like the core fabrics of what makes of how you are made and how we're made, because we kind of operate in the same full steam ahead capabilities. And
you gotta be.
Exactly. So it couldn't have been a better first person to be on this podcast, and really excited to see your journey, and congratulations on making it this far as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and best of luck on your podcast. I think this is amazing, and I'm very excited to just continue listening to all your episodes.
Thank you. All right, guys, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, and hope everyone has a great rest of the day. All right. Bye, Tamara. Hey, thank you again so much. Good luck this week, and be well. All right.
You too. All right. Bye.